Today, we are chatting about the topic of essentialism and how living a more essential life is your path to a clear, purposeful, and aligned life. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into a conversation of what essentialism really is, because I can feel y'all, especially if you're watching on YouTube, okay, about to be like, well, those earrings aren't essential, okay, or that anthropology lamp in the back is not essential. I cannot stress this enough. Essentialism is not about living a sterile, stripped down, colorless, boring life. It's about living a clear life. It's about really at the heart of it, I view essentialism as making high value choices based upon clarity of what matters and what's important to you. Okay. That is what essentialism is to me. That is how I would interpret it. And that is how I would encourage someone who's living in the 2024 world, the modern world, to view essentialism. Okay. I know you're going to spend money. I know you're going to be out and about. I know you're going to do things. It's now thinking about what really matters, slowing down just a little bit, right? And getting clear first before you go and exchange value, exchange money, exchange time. All right. So I want you to think about the different pillars of your life. We call these the different pillars of your life. There's also a common term, we call it the wheel of life, where wheel of balance is another one, right? Where it's basically, what are the different areas that make up the human life? Like your spiritual health, your physical health, your emotional health, things like your romantic relationship, your family, your friends, finances. The list goes on and on. You can even add, I like to add for some of my clients, it makes sense to add their personal style, their home life. For me, that's a really big pillar of my life is my home and cultivating the space that I occupy and bring people into. So I'm going to put this on the screen, put them down and below in the show notes, but think about what are the different pillars of your life, right? And essentialism is asking yourself the question, what's really important for me in this area? Not just what's kind of important, but I mean like what is the most important? Like what is truly important for me in this area or for you in this area, okay? I emphasize that piece, that for you, really contextualizing it to your personal experience, because here is why. When you're not constantly having to slow down enough to ask yourself, is this thing true for me? You'll find yourself living life, making choices by societal's default, by your friend's default, by what your family says you should do, by what your partner says you should do, rather than slowing down enough to really check in with you. Okay. There is a great book, and he talks about this idea of how essentialism allows you to live life by design. I think that is so powerful. It's like you check in with you, you decide, you get the download from you. For me, in my case, it's from God. It's from making sure that we're aligned first, and then you allow that to be your guide for your life. This is so important because we don't realize how native, how ingrained marketing has become. We are constantly being sold to, we're constantly being influenced, okay? Not just on social media, but just everywhere we go, by what we see, by how we see different people moving, showing up, looking in this world. When we see certain couples, when we see people have the life that we want, our minds are constantly trying to figure out, how can I get that, right? These devices and technology shapes our thinking, not just when we're using them, but when we then get onto the world, all right? You've spent so much time ignoring your soul's calling, ignoring that part of you and that part of yourself that is constantly talking to yourself, right? Constantly talking to you, constantly giving you messages and peace and advice and little nudges. Can we just welcome that part of yourself for a second? Like, can we stop fighting that part of you and just be real? Just be real with yourself. What do you really want out of life? Okay. So you can think about this question of what's really important to you, both at the micro level, right? By looking at those different pillars of your life, or you can just pull up a level and think more broadly and then dip down into the micro level. So that more broad question might just look like, what matters to me in life? In this season of life that I'm in, what's the most important thing to you right now in this season of life? Doesn't mean that you're going to do this once and done and you'll never have to do it again, because guess what? Life is constantly trying to tell you how to think, how to feel, what you should prioritize, how you should use your time, what you should be involved in, what you should look like, what you should be spending your money on, okay? So you're going to have to constantly train your mind, train yourself, get the reps in, right? And getting that comfortable listening to yourself and being that centered in you and knowing that you don't need anything else that you don't already have. Anything else that you buy, right? All of that you exchange is just extra, right? But you're not lacking anything. And I don't just mean that when I talk about essentialism. I don't just mean that when I talk about money. I mean that when I talk about your time. I mean that when I talk about your relationships, especially in the Black community. You know that as Black women, as women of color, we really put marriage on a pedestal, right? We put it on a pedestal so often. I'm here to tell you, you are not lacking anything because you don't have a husband, okay? You're not lacking love because you don't have a man. That is not true. Get that out of your mind right now, okay? And so getting into this mindset of that, okay, I'm not lacking. I'm not lacking, but I can make a choice. I can still make a high-value choice to exchange my time, energy, money, effort, love for something, and still know that you are not lacking one good thing. So this idea of essentialism, right, it's this clarity. I think of it kind of as like two key steps. Is one, getting clear on you, what you find valuable first and foremost. And once you have that clarity, then you start to apply it by making high-value choices. Making high-value choices about your time, high-value choices about your money, your effort, etc. Okay? I cannot stress this enough. When we talk about essentialism, it's not just about doing less for sport. It's about doing less so that you can do what's more important. Actually, doing less so that you can do what's most important. Okay? About doing less so that you can live more deeply, more clear, more rooted, more soulfully. You can give more of yourself to the things that you truly care about and really allow yourself to sow into something. Okay? And in doing so, you will find yourself, by living a more essential life, you will find yourself reclaiming agency over your time, reclaiming agency over your money. You'll be like, oh, I'm starting to get the bag a little bit. I have some money saved up. I have some things like now I can actually move with. And I want that for you. I want you to have more agency and have more choice. And how you actually in your life have more choice over your life is not falling into this overconsumption. All right? Then you have some real, what is the word? Leverage to work with. Not just financially, I just mean in general. Now you can really go out and do what you want to do. Okay, so we've talked a little bit, and now I just want to ask you, like, what has been the barometer for the choices in your life? Is it about what other people say is important, about what your mama says is important, your family says, what social media tells you, what your colleagues say? Or is it really about what feels and what you deep down know is important for you? Be honest with yourself. No benefit in fibbing to yourself. No benefit in facade, putting on a front. You can be real with you. All right, you can be real with you. I want to share a couple of ways, some steps that I'm going to encourage you to take after this conversation. The first thing I want you to do is just get curious about yourself. We so often talk about being curious and getting curious in reference to, the people that we're with, our loved ones, our partner, the world around us. We're always like, I want to be a lifelong learner and studier of this world. But we forget to be curious about ourselves. Let me help you understand. I've seen change in my clients, even just from 1 year to year. Okay, I've seen changes in my girlfriends as they move through different seasons, different roles. And so I am here to tell you, my love, it is likely that your priorities have changed in life, and that is okay. You can admit that, hey, I might be a little bit different. My priorities have changed. I know mine have. My priorities from 2 years ago are very different than they are today. And that's okay, right? We make assumptions about ourselves, but forget to realize that you are changing in ways that you may not even slow down enough to notice. So that's the first thing, because I don't want you just to make assumptions based on what has mattered to you in the past or who you thought you were. Who are you really? Who are you right now? And based on who you are right now, what really matters to you, okay? Step 2, look. I'm not going to give you a little bit of homework without making it a little bit of a growth opportunity, okay? So in step 2, I want you to be honest with yourself and notice where you've taken on the non-essentials. Another way of thinking about this is where you've taken on things that don't matter to you. I had to be really honest with myself when I did this in reference to my client work. And I realized that I cared so much about the client that it really started to muddle the scope of what I was doing with that client. And so we had to have a conversation. I'm so grateful that we did, and that flexibility and freedom was there, and that trust was there to really be able to name that. And I'm saying, I've taken on things that are outside the scope. And the reason that they're not in my scope, and the reason that I don't say I do those things, is because these aren't the things I want to spend my time on, right? These aren't the things that I believe are the highest value exchange for you and for myself. And so for you, I want you to be honest. Where have you taken on those unimportant non-essentials? Okay. This can be tough. It can be tough, but sometimes a simple way to start and lean into this is just by walking around your house, going through your old clothes, going through stuff that you just stopped using, and you're like, oh, I don't even need this, right? And that gets you in the realization that believe me, you have taken on non-essentials. And so if you're physically taking on non-essentials and the stuff that you're hoarding, keeping on to, buying, just imagine how much emotional non-essentials you've taken on. Just imagine how much emotional excess you've taken on with your job, doing stuff that is just, not only is it not in the context, the scope of what you're supposed to be doing, but it's also just not important work for you. Taking on certain roles as a mother, as a wife, because you feel like you have to. Let me tell you, when you're doing those, when you're taking on what you feel obligated to do, rather than what brings you true fulfillment, it can still be a growth area. It can still be you evolving, but let it bring you fulfillment. Everyone's more joyful. Everything is better when you're actually enjoying what you do, when you're actually loving what you're doing. And the third thing I want you to do is just to practice. Practice this art of essentialism. Remember what I was saying about we are all swimming in this overconsumption, this living life by default. This is going to take some reps for you to get confident again in practicing essentialism. But here are some tips for you, okay? I'm going to start to practice the art of being clear in what really matters to you, and then communicating with clarity to those around you, communicating to your partner, communicating to friends, communicating to your employers, your colleagues, your team, right? Allowing your clarity to then be collective and shared with others so they know now what you stand for and what matters. The second way to practice is just to practice more of those high value choices, right? So now with that clarity, now you start to make high value choices with your time, your energy, your effort, and your money, okay? Not just doing things because you see it on social media or whatever the case may be, but really slowing down and ask yourself, is this a high value choice, right? And maybe the last way that I will encourage you to practice, and we all know this, but it's just practice gracefully, practice lovingly, but firmly saying no, okay? You see, people will probe and they'll push and they'll try to convince and do all this stuff to make you say yes, because that's what we've been taught by society to do, right? We've been taught that we can always be sold. We can always be convinced, right? Just ask a few more times and eventually they'll say yes, right? That's constantly the air that we're all consuming. Just look at how people do marketing, right? Ask enough times, they'll change their mind. Ask enough ways, everyone can be convinced. And they think that not because they think ill of you, but because they may not have a centering. They may not be grounded. They may make frivolous choices. They may be swayed easily, right? And so that's what they're accustomed to. They're going to try it on you. And so learn the art of being clear and allowing that clarity to come up sometimes as a yes and sometimes it comes up as a no, and that's okay, right? But in doing so, again, it goes back to you allow people to know what you stand for. And that can be really helpful for the relationships and adding more valuable relationships and love and experiences into your life. That is all I have for y'all today. Cannot wait to chat next time. Much love. Take care.